Pre-pandemic, Moderna was better known for its potential. The fledgling startup had yet to produce even a single commercial vaccine. But then came COVID.
You must stay at home.
Go home and stay home.
Moderna would become just one of 2 biotech companies to produce a viable mRNA vaccine. Distribution ramped up, so did stock prices. And now a new chief medical officer has grabbed the reins. Dr. Paul Burton worked at Johnson & Johnson for 16 years. Now he's working for Moderna, tapped for his global and commercial expertise. We sat down to discuss the vaccine, why it has struggled against the competition, and what comes next. Can I start by asking you that, the very ominous sounding question of what keeps you up at night? Is it, ramping up production, reformulation of the vaccine against variants, the vaccine in kids? What is it?
Well, look, I think it's really a combination of all of those. We have invested over a decade, and as we go into winter now, of course, will we see a surge in new variants of concern, variants of interest? That's a key topic that I think about a lot.
Okay, so let's go through those things one at a time. Starting with vaccines in kids. We know in the United States, the rollout is underway. Moderna is not part of that rollout, pending, in kids under 18, pending more information about the potential for heart complications. But we have seen some European countries actively advising in favor of Pfizer and against Moderna for those very sort of young people. Is that concern warranted?
Well, I would say no. We do see a small increased risk in 18 to 24-year-olds. That's been described around the world. It seems to be in common with mRNA vaccines. But it's very low numbers, and these cases, I would also reassure people, are typically mild and are typically short-lived.
What explains that? Why would we see that kind of a difference between the two?
I don't think we understand it. We know that COVID brings with it a very large and important risk of myocarditis, and that's probably due to the spike protein. Our vaccine has 100 micrograms of messenger RNA, so it produces a little bit more of the spike protein, and it may be that is what could account for this, but it's very isolated. And again, I would just reassure people that these cases are typically mild and they're typically short-lived.
Is there a side of you, though, that worries about how it might affect the hesitancy in people? And I'm thinking about parents who are now considering whether to have their young children vaccinated. And when they hear reports, I just think of AstraZeneca and the complications with blood clots, how that affected the rollout. You must have a similar sort of concern when it comes to Moderna.
Yeah, so, we know that COVID in and of itself, maybe 450 people per million will get some kind of severe heart disease, myocarditis. What we see again with vaccination is perhaps 20 per million, so very, very lower, would get myocarditis. And again, it's mild, typically self-limiting, relatively easily treated.
And as far as the actual administration of the vaccine in younger people, do we know at this point whether it will be possible to use existing stock of Moderna vaccine for adults and simply to dose it differently for kids, or does it require the kind of procurement of an entire new set of vaccine?
No, it should be using standard vaccine that we have now, but just probably at the 50 microgram dose level, so a quarter of a mil from a standard vial.
Can I ask you about booster shots? Where are we at on that front? Is the focus right now simply on producing them or reformulating them against things like Delta or Delta Plus?
We are investigating as well messenger RNA sequences that we can put in our vaccine against, for example, Delta and other variants of concern. Those are in testing, and we'll be able to bring those data, I would think, to people and regulators before the end of the year, and then we can consider whether we need those or the current standard vaccine is sufficient. We know we have good cover with our current vaccine against Delta. So we can do that. We can pivot quickly to new variants if needed. But right now, 1273, our Moderna vaccine, has great protection.
And so just a final thought, Dr. Burton, on the virus itself, the trajectory of the virus, and sort of what concerns you How would you sort of leave this conversation? What do you think Canadians ought to keep in mind?
Look, I think we've all been through a remarkable 2 years now, almost. It's been an amazing journey. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. Countries' populations are nearing high concentrations of full vaccination. That really is, coupled with boosting and additional dosing, the only way, I think, to get out of the pandemic. We've got the winter to get through. That's going to be challenging, but we have surveillance technology now. The world is working together, I think, to be able to look at variants of concern, Delta, Delta Plus. We have agents in development for those if needed, but we feel confident in the current vaccine. So I think the light is at the end of the tunnel, and I'm very optimistic.